In China, the rise and eventual adoption of Confucianism by the Han Dynasty represented the birth of a uniquely Chinese culture that would last for millennia. But what was that like for women? Did the improved bureaucracies and emphasis on meritocracy extend to them as well? Nah. Confucian ideology emphasized moderation, virtue, filial piety, loyalty to your family, and covered up the authoritarian policies of the regime. For women, Confucianism was and remains a problematic barrier to women's rights and feminism, and is deeply ingrained in Asian cultures. So, who is this Confucius, and what was his beef with women? He lived around 500 BCE and was considered one of the great Chinese sages. He was a bureaucrat, a teacher, and a philosopher. He lived in a time when leaders were corrupt, not working towards the needs of the empire and its people. He wanted social harmony and political stability, grounded in trust and mutual moral obligations for China. Confucius's ideas were recorded as a philosophy, but one that has often been associated with oppressing women through subjugation to the male head of household, and even to their sons during widowhood. So wait, you change their diapers one day and they stand over you the next? Whether Confucius intended this discrimination is hard to know, but Confucianism and sexism are intertwined. Perhaps there's too much fire thrown at Confucius. After all, he basically ignored the existence of women in his writing. When 10 ministers came to see the king, for instance, Confucius states that 9 came. One of them was a woman. Why he neglected her is really unclear. Was he commenting on the unusuality of a woman in that role, or was he merely distinguishing men from women? There are only a few direct references to women, and one of them is incredibly hostile. He says, "Women and servants are hard to deal with." I'll show you hard to deal with. Come here, Confucius. It is from Confucius that we get the yin and yang concept that balances feminine qualities and masculine qualities as separate but equal. Feminists today reject this model as it has been used to justify women's subordination and exclusion from life outside the home. Yin and yang are starkly different. Man and woman have different qualities. Yang is strong, but yin is weak and yielding. Please. Have you met women? A man was honored for his strength, yet a woman was glorified for her beauty. Oh, stop. When a man can survive birthing a child, I'll believe he's as strong as Confucius says he is. Confucian philosophy meant that women lived pretty subjugated lives. Women could not earn money outside the home and were expected to leave their family to join their spouses when they married. So many baby girls were abandoned shortly after birth, a practice called infanticide. And this wasn't restricted to China. Baby girls in every region of the world faced the threat of simply being female. Female infanticide, by the way, there's no such thing as male infanticide, remains one of the largest human rights issues of our time. One ancient Chinese man recalled, "Even a poor man would bring up a son, but a rich man would dispose of a daughter." Girls in China who survived were given virtuous names like Chastity in hopes that she would live up to it. Chinese women had no control over who they married and had to live with. They moved in with their spouse's family, who selected her often as a strong mate. The old proverb went, "A boy is born facing in, a girl is born facing out." Confucianism solidified women's second-class status and culturally ingrained the prohibition on women's formal education. Women's education ebbed when outsiders gained control of traditional Chinese regions, but the persistent domination of Confucianism locked women into perpetual slavery in their families. One scholar wrote, "Few people teach their daughters to read and write nowadays for fear that they might become over-ambitious." Another wrote, "It is sufficient for women to know a glossary of a few hundred words, such as fuel, rice, fish, and meat, for their daily use. To know more can do more harm than good." I've got just 2 vocabulary words to say to that scholar, but they aren't new words at all. Analects about women in early text encouraged girls to be chaste and silent. It also provided guidance for parents. Keep your daughters indoors. She ought to be under your total command. You should scold her roundly if she is not quickly to obey. Remind her often of self-discipline and household duties. Ensure that she shows deference towards guests and that she retires quietly once tea has been served. Do not spoil your daughter for fear of her becoming unruly. Never encourage or tolerate self-destructive behavior for fear of fostering in her a suicidal tendency. Do not teach her to sing for fear of corrupting her mind. Do not let her loiter for fear of evil temptation. Oh my gosh, these poor Chinese girls.